Okay, so there's no denying it. Aaron Charles Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. As the successor to Brett Favre in Green Bay, Rodgers was set up perfectly with the Packers, and after finally getting a chance in 2008, he never turned back. Rodgers won a Super Bowl with the Packers in 2010, and in the prime of his career, was expected to potentially create a dynasty in Green Bay, but that didn't happen. Aaron Rodgers has never and will never win another Super Bowl again, despite racking up the second most MVPs in NFL history with 4. But over time, the public opinion, as you know, with Aaron Rodgers has grown toxic, and it's kind of just split into 2, with both camps feeling very passionate about their opinions on Aaron Rodgers. Now, once again, the talent is undeniable, and in his prime, there are large amounts of people that truly believe Aaron Rodgers is the best player in NFL history, and I'm not even sure I personally disagree. 2011 Aaron Rodgers is, in my mind, the best individual season by any quarterback ever, but at the same time, for how many people believe Rodgers was the best of the best, over time he just couldn't get it done in the postseason. And the turning point in Rodgers' career, when everyone started looking at him more negatively, came during his 3rd and 4th MVP seasons, because before that, people actually gave him a lot of sympathy. In the mid-2010s, he was battling injuries and had bad defenses and kind of didn't really have that high of expectations, but in 2020, he did. In 2020, the Packers were 3-point favorites to close out the Bucs in the NFC Championship game and make the Super Bowl, but it didn't happen. Rodgers and the Packers fell short, and then fast forward a year later and another MVP later, and the Packers fell short again, at home again, this time to the 49ers in Lambeau Field. So Packers fans were getting pissed at him now, and meanwhile, his off-the-field personality was deteriorating a bit. Now remember, back in 2021, NFL players were greatly urged to get the vaccine, and Aaron Rodgers wasn't really a huge fan of that. He's a big self-medicating guy, and this to me was the main moment that the narrative around Rodgers turned from negative to, okay, this guy's a bit of a prick. And when he ended up telling reporters that he was immunized and wasn't actually vaccinated, he ended up getting sidelined after that, and people just started to rightfully label Rodgers as being selfish. However, to his credit, he's since regretted those comments, but still, the public perception became very negative after that, especially since all he's done is disappoint on the football field in the postseason since 2010, and then, in 2022, things got really bad. This time, Rodgers didn't play that well for the Packers, and Green Bay ended up missing the playoffs while his shenanigans became more and more publicized. And then, the straw that broke the camel's back at the end of 2022 was when Rodgers made it clear that he never wanted to play for the Green Bay Packers again, choosing the same route that Favre took back in the day, and basically forced the Jets to trade for Aaron Rodgers, and the Packers had to move on from their franchise quarterback of the last decade plus, but they ended up fulfilling his wish. The Packers traded Rodgers to the Jets, where, as you know, things have only gotten worse for Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. As a New York Jet, Aaron Rodgers was already completely divisive among all NFL fans. The guy was already pretty political and was outspoken on his own personal conspiracy theories, which is a whole nother thing, and had developed a bit of an ego, but the biggest problem was Rodgers as a player was now potentially viewed in the locker room as a bit of a cancer, and it seemed as if the Jets were ready to roll over and give Rodgers all the power he wanted, bringing in a bunch of his old Packers friends in offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, and more. So the Jets were at the mercy of Aaron Rodgers, which was rubbing everyone the wrong way, and some reports were coming out that showed he was a little too controlling. But, you know, Jets fans for the most part were ready to put all of that to the side if he could just go out there and be the best Jets quarterback since, well, Brett Favre. And instead, you know what happens. So yeah, Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles and was out for the season, which made him an even easier target for the rest of the NFL. Remember, this was a guy that spent the whole offseason talking about psychedelic use, darkness retreats, and had a whole thing going during the Pat McAfee show where he would basically show up once a week, say some crazy shit, and the rest of the show would cheer him on. And while the Jets were struggling on the field, Rodgers' critics couldn't really get that upset at Aaron Rodgers because, well, he wasn't playing. So the 2024 season would truly be a make or break year for Rodgers. Was he the savior of the Jets, or would he only make things worse? And boy, did we get our answer this year. And Aaron Rodgers went from like a guy that was kind of like an old hippie dude to, wow, I really, really hate this guy. Aaron Rodgers had a rough start coming back to the Jets, no doubt about that. You'd think at his age he'd be like Peyton Manning in 2015, where he was hungry as hell for just another shot at a ring, but at least from an outside perspective, it really seemed like he felt as if he was bigger than the team, going out of his way to vacation in Egypt while missing mandatory minicamp, which I don't care who you are, that is going to rub teammates the wrong way. And it really came off as an ego-motivated move, because, like, if a random special teams dude came into work the next week and was like, hey, sorry coach, I was in Egypt, well, we're good, right? His ass would be cut in seconds, but Rodgers obviously got a pass, which then led to the start of the season where Rodgers started out the year on a solid note. The Jets were 2-1 and lost to a pretty good 49ers team, so all was well, right? Well, no, not at all. Rodgers was seen pushing away Robert Saleh, the Jets head coach at the time, on the sideline, further indicating a deeper locker room issue. And given the headlock Rodgers had on the front office, this was not a good sign. And like I said, Rodgers was playing okay, but he wasn't Lamar Jackson or anything, so he just simply didn't even remotely deserve the level of control and power he had, but he had it anyways, and from there, Aaron Rodgers began to get everything he wanted. Rodgers had an abysmal game versus the Broncos, and lost a game they had no business losing, and after that, Robert Saleh and Rodgers sort of shot backhanded comments at each other, with Saleh saying that the Jets had way too many pre-snap penalties due to Rodgers' cadence and him not being there in the offseason to get the players experience with that cadence. And Rodgers kind of just said, nah, you guys are just bad. You gotta get used to it. And at this point, Robert Saleh had chosen death. You don't cross Aaron Rodgers and live in New York at the same time, and after another tough loss to one of the best teams in football in the Minnesota Vikings, Robert Saleh was fired, even though Rodgers said he had nothing to do with this decision at all. Now, you're not dumb. You should know that Rodgers, at the very least, knew it was going to happen and gave his okay, but alright, we'll play devil's advocate for a second. Even if you think Rodgers truly had zero impact on this decision, explain to me why 1 week later, after another loss, the Jets went out and traded for Davante Adams, Rodgers' best friend from Green Bay, even though their season was already looking down the drain. And now the two are literally living together, which, you know, take that for what you will. Now, do you see why people hate Aaron Rodgers if you somehow didn't before? The dude is calling all the shots, while from the surface at least, not putting in the work to earn his teammates' respect at all. Which is why time and time again, after this Davante move, I stopped believing in the Jets. I thought they were going to be good, and they're still absurdly talented, but this team is just straight up artificial. You can't just go out and answer every need of your star quarterback. That's not how this game works. And following Rodgers' request being answered, things just kept getting worse. Without Saleh, the defense regressed, and the Jets dropped a primetime game to the Steelers in Davante's debut, and then managed to fall to the Jacoby Brissett-led Patriots, with Drake May getting injured. And at 2-6, this team that was thought to be a playoff lock, with all pros and Pro Bowl caliber guys everywhere, would need a miracle of God to even get to 500. But it looks like there's no shot of even that happening. The Jets got smashed by the Cardinals and Colts, and Aaron Rodgers is still just not doing himself any favors. The brother has gone out of his way to constantly question the coaching to reporters, and has possibly subtly thrown other teammates under the bus as well. And, you know, he's not even wrong about a lot of what he's saying. It's just the way he's doing it. He just continues to come off as an arrogant prick, and once again, from our perspective, why shouldn't we view Rodgers this way? He's done nothing but play mid-football all year, while the Jets have been the most disappointing team in the NFL. There is only negativity around this team, and to have the influence to possibly fire Robert Saleh and go get Davante Adams on his own volition has just negatively impacted the culture. And this isn't even mentioning that the Jets had to demote Nathaniel Hackett, their offensive coordinator and Aaron Rodgers' buddy, in the middle of the year, so there's that too. And even recently, we're now getting some very interesting reports from Connor Hughes that the Jets may just clean house next season. And yeah, he was right. The Jets recently just fired general manager Joe Douglas, and a new era in New York is set to kick off after the season. So I don't know, to me it's just sad. This was a guy who was one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history in his prime, and one of my favorite players of all time. I'll never forget his most iconic plays, and for that I'm grateful, but it really sucks to see him like this. He just doesn't seem like he's enjoying himself, and the team doesn't like him back. It's like being a fan of Kanye's music, you know? You want him to do better, but deep down, you know it's over, no matter how much you'd like to still hold out hope. So yeah, Aaron Rodgers is still one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, but as of right now, he's a changed man, and that to me makes him the most polarizing player in the NFL today. But anyways, if you like this video, then subscribe, because I have a lot of videos on the channel just like this one. And if you did like this video, watch this video I did a few weeks ago on Trevor Lawrence and the misery of the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's pretty good, trust me. And thanks to all my patrons for pledging $1. It truly does mean a lot. But anyways, until next time.